Would you recommend psychedelics for us?
100%. After conversing with you guys for a couple minutes, there's a few things that I've identified, if I may be frank. One is mental limitations. Verbiage is extremely important. How you speak about yourself, how you speak about opportunity, how you see the world needs to be seen from a place of abundance and opportunity, not from a place of scarcity and need. And a lot of people, whether they believe it or not, they operate out of a place of scarcity and need and fear because they haven't developed the mental framework of believing and confiding in themselves and trusting themselves. So I think initially people need to reshift their framework. Psychedelics at a very basic level, what it does is, one, it provides neurogenesis. So neurogenesis after the age of 25 is extremely rare. So finding supplementation that gives you the ability to reintroduce neurogenesis into your biology, as well as neuroplasticity, is extremely important. Psilocybin, which is the component inside psychedelic mushrooms, has been used throughout history forever. And it's only been tabooed for the last 100 years. The last 100 years of human history, we've been in the dark ages. People are dumb. People are illiterate. People are misinformed. Just because people have cell phones and just because people are able to live in an apartment does not mean that they're free, does not mean that they're educated, does not mean that their mental frameworks are good. So when I begin to ask people, and I find this oftentimes, what do you need? I ask somebody all the time, what do you need? Automatically, the de facto for most people is, I need money, even if they're rich.
Well, money's a tool, right? And it can get you the
But
freedom.
how much money do you need?
I mean, that's, everyone gets to a certain stage and they want more and more and more. There doesn't seem to be an end point. We ask a lot of our guests, when is enough enough? And they always say, never. That's the most common answer. So I don't think there necessarily is an end to that game. It is an endless game you can play.
That's why you don't play it.
Are there risks associated with psychedelics?
Yes.
Or
you can lose your mind.
So I was going to say this is pretty interesting because we've had David Icke on the pod, and he was talking about how the human brain can only see a certain, visible light, a certain out the spectrum of light. What was kind of your experience when you were taking these psychedelics? What was the trip like?
So David Icke, he's quite accurate, I believe, in his interpretation of how we perceive reality, because we perceive reality through our senses, right? How you see things, how you taste things, how you feel things, how you hear things. But what if there's more to reality than your senses? What if there's more to reality than your senses? What if what you perceive is just a part of reality?
I think that's a certainty, isn't it? Lots of animals can see lots of different things that we can't through different senses that we don't have.
Exactly. So what if there's senses that people have that they've been desensitized to in order to perceive more of reality? You can talk about fluoridation inside the water. Fluoridation inside the water, estrogen inside the water, is a massive chemical campaign against humanity to calcify people's pineal glands, to feminize men, to intoxicate people. And it's happening all around us. You can talk about the water supply. You can talk about the food. You can talk about the pesticides. You can talk about the hormones that they give girls. This birth control concept, this is new. Birth control hasn't existed forever. What are the ramifications of putting 1 billion women on monthly recurring revenue of estrogen? Do they need it? Or have we just normalized, a psyop? And I think that that's what people need to start evaluating, questioning everything. And back to what we were talking about, the old generation, they didn't question anything because they had nothing to compare it to. Today, we have things to compare it to. So we need to use other references in order to find truth.
So are these decisions being consciously made, and who's making them? So who's deciding we're going to put estrogen in the water and we're going to get girls to take this and we're going to put this in the food to control the masses? Who's making that decision?
I think it goes back to what I talked about. As I said, humanity in our human experience is merely a representation of the whole, right? So if you have the entire body, you only need a couple cancer cells to kill the entire thing. We are to the universe the same way that cells are to us. We're just components of it. So the components represent the totality of everything. So what you're experiencing right now in reality is not just one individual person. It's a systemic issue which comes from a low-level mentality. It comes from a low vibrational state. It comes from thinking short term. It comes from being selfish. It comes from being inauthentic. It comes from living in lies. It comes from being greedy. It comes from being selfish. All of these ramifications are now displayed in reality through money, through wars, through stealing, through killing, through estrogen in the water, through poisoning food. They don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck. Why would they?
But who's they?
Millions of people, brother.
So, for example, everyone taking part in drinking the water, they're not consciously saying, I'm going to drink this and I want everyone to poison themselves.
Correct.
So is it a conscious move from the powers that be to control the masses, or is it the masses are controlling themselves?
It's both. It's both. I mean, you can look at, for example, simple things like processed sugar. Up until the last couple decades, processed sugar was considered normal, but there was clearly ramifications to it. We just didn't know them. So I think people also go through a phase of ignorance, and we are in a stage now of getting rid of ignorance. That is truth, right? So to get rid of chaos, you need to introduce order. You need to introduce orderly thought. And that's what you see the powers that be. It's not so much, oh, let's poison this, let's attack this. It's let's cause chaos, because in chaos, you can't solve problems. And in chaos, you can just assume control because everybody's kind of scrambling.